Who remembers that sound? Who has PTSD from that? Oh, I don't. Games like that don't do that for me. But hey, look, we're going to talk about Slender the Eight Pages. Welcome back to Memory Lane. Now, we're going to talk about probably one of the most recognizable figures in all of gaming lore. And that's the Slender Man. Okay, we all know the Slender Man. Big, tall, skinny dude in a tuxedo, uh, bright white skin, no face, no hair, no nothing. It's just his body, just a real tall, skinny body with a head, arms, and sometimes tentacles. We're going to talk about the original, the first Slender the Eight Pages, the one that kind of kicked off this whole thing. Uh, it came out in June of 2012, and I believe Slender himself, the figure, was created in 2009, and it was at the point just a creepypasta before Parsec Productions and Mark J. Hadley is the guy's name who created Slender the game. That's this one here. Now, when this game came out, it came out during the heyday of YouTube. So this is another one of those games that everybody played and just got immediate attention. This game was highly praised by critics, and when it came out, it it was everywhere. Every YouTuber played it. You know, everyone talked about it. It was the hot game at the time when it came out, and it kicked off a whole franchise of games and spin-offs and lore, and even came out with a Slenderman movie back in 2018. You know, I remember seeing some YouTubers play the Slenderman Shadow Maps, and that was created by Mark Steen. That's a different guy. But like, it's just that's a whole plethora of games by itself. Then you have Slender the Nine Pages. You have Slender Anxiety. You have Slender uh, Arrival. And I believe they just released a new Slender game on Steam. I think about a month ago, maybe even sooner than that. But the fact that this, oh, yeah, and the countless Flash games, you know, but still, like this game, this person, this figure is still out today. Not as big as he was, but still relevant enough for him to that his games are still getting views, his names is still getting downloads. You know, people with this lore, and I'm gonna go back to the lore here in a minute, but it's still big enough to have that type of attention. Now to go back to the lore, uh, it's called creepypasta. And Slender is one of the biggest names of all the creepypasta. Now, creepypasta, you have stuff like The Rake and SCP, stuff like that. Um, but Slender is probably one of the biggest up there. And I did my research. I did a little bit of homework here, and said that Mark J. Hadley, the guy who created Slender, the Eight Pages, was inspired from Amnesia: The Dark Descent, which is another game that we're going to get to further down the memory lane here. But it was a game that, like I said, was highly praised by critics, and the inspiration drawn, which you can tell if you ever played both these games, you can tell, like, just like the dark and gloomy atmosphere, and the building of tension, and you have like little to no defense. Like you're just this person with some type of light source, either a torch or a flashlight or something, and you're just going through this maze of whatever, finding stuff you need to beat the game. And Slender the Eight Pages, you're in the woods, just you and a flashlight, and there's these pages that are scattered around the woods, and they have these random drawings on there, like, you know, run, 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 hide, stuff like that. And you have to collect eight of them. And I believe, I don't remember if it's this one or the next one where you have to go back to where you started from, but I think you do. But this game also has a point where I forgot what it's called, but the more pages you collect, the harder it becomes. The more Slender is upon you, the more he's hunting you down, the more active he gets. You know, within one page, nothing. Two pages, the music changes, and within three pages, he's activated. You'll start seeing him more. And you can tell when Slenderman's chasing you because you can kind of visually see the screen getting a little bit darker. And then there's static that pops up. When static pops up like that, He's close. He's close. And when he got you, you know he got you because that noise you hear in the beginning of this, that's him getting you. That's the death noise or whatever it's called. And then the static flashes is a flashing screen. You'll see his face standing over you, and then you got to restart from the beginning. I don't remember if this Slender Man here has tentacles or not for this game. I haven't played it in so long, but there's times we see him with tentacles. There's some times you see him with nothing. It's just a tall dude. Um, but as they do more with Slender, the more he gets active. I believe there's some games where he actually moves. You actually watch him physically move towards you versus just him being a static figure in the background, standing from afar in the woods. But I remember the first time playing this game, and I was like, "What? I didn't know what the hell to do. It just collect 8 pages," and I died within like the first 2 pages because I was like, I was young when this came out, not young, but it's not like, you know, I wasn't a skilled PC gamer or anything like that. I was just a kid in high school. Back to what I was saying earlier. You have no defense. You have nothing. When he sees you, you just got to get away from him. You can't fight. You have no gun. You can't shoot him. You just got to get away from him. That's it. It's just you and a flashlight looking for these damn notebook pages that people scribbled all over and just taped them to trees and other landmarks in the woods. That it's that simple. There's not a whole lot of meat to this bone, other than it's just you're in the woods, these dark woods, because it's never daytime in Slender games except for some of the newer ones, and you got to find these 8 drawings that are taped to trees and buildings and rocks and shit in the middle of the woods while this dude is chasing you with no face, no feet, and skinny body. I don't know where the idea came from, but apparently it worked. Because when you say it like that, it just sounds stupid. But it was a game that actually worked. It worked. It worked well. It worked enough to where it's still talked about today. I said it made a movie back in 2018. Didn't do very well, but it still made a movie. All for something that started as just a piece of folklore, on the, I wouldn't say the dark side of internet, but it was definitely the weird side. Creepypastas are definitely the weird side of the internet. For those you know. And it's definitely one of the games that kind of really defined the survival horror genre. Of course, there's other names and bigger names, but it, like I said, this game came out, people were playing it, putting it on YouTube, and they blew up. Markiplier, PewDiePie, Toby Turner, just to throw some names out there, you know. And this was that time where everybody was trying to be a YouTuber because it's the heyday of YouTube. So, if you listen to my last episode, I talked about it when I was talking about Happy Wheels. This game came out right around the same time as Happy Wheels did. So, if you wanted a horror game, this was one of the first games to pop up when you typed in horror games on Google. Because it was everywhere. It was in everyone's computer screens. It was on everyone's YouTube. It was quite a bit places. It's still to this day. It's not like it's the original 8 pages, the one we're talking about here, has a ton of replay value, other than, if you can do it quicker. But it's still a game that you can go back and play and just get that nostalgic feeling like you would a lot of these other flash games and stuff like that. It's not really a flash game, but it's nothing you're really paying for either. Just find it and download it. Simple as that. But the Slender, as time went on, they kept giving him more and more uh, figures and features to his body. But this one here, I think, if I'm standing in front of him, he's this big, tall, 7, 8 foot guy, probably weighs about 6 pounds, because he's just this stick figure with a tuxedo, no face, bald headed, all white. You know, he's got about 12-foot long fingers because he's everything has to be long and lanky on this fucking guy, that are also just pale white and nothing. And he doesn't move. He's just there. He's just standing there looking at you as you collect these fucking drawings in the middle of the woods with a flashlight. and no transportation, no gun, no nothing. You know, if I remember correctly, I think the game itself kind of just plops you in the middle of the woods and says, "All right, go find these pages." Who in the right mind is like, you know what? I'm gonna go in the woods and just look for some pages. I'm gonna go look for some papers because that's what else you got to do in the woods. You know what I do in the woods? I don't know, I go camping. That's about it. Maybe hunting, but I'm not gonna go out looking for drawings taped to trees. It, like I said, it just sounds dumb, but it worked because that's just the basic layout of it. That's just a bare skeleton of what became this monument of a thing. Slender man. Today people my age, people a little bit younger than me, people a little bit older than me, we've all heard the name. We all can put, uh, we all can see Slender in our heads when we say Slender Man. It's you obviously can't be listening to this episode and not know anything about this. But this game here, and remember the tension building because I wasn't big on like horror games because like it's like I like horror, I like scary, but I will watch like horror movies all the time, and like they didn't do shit for me. Now I was playing these games, and it's a bit different because you don't normally watch, you know, movies with headphones, and so I would always play games with computer games with headphones on at least, uh, to get the better, or just to hear it better, really. And when Slender got me the first time, just that boom, and he turns on, he's got you. That got me a little bit. I didn't jump and scream like some of these people kind of overdo it on YouTube. I was just like, oh shit, like that was cool. That was real cool. Of course, I wasn't making YouTube or doing no podcasting at the time. I was just a high school kid playing games because I had nothing better to do. But it's like you couldn't you couldn't got me at a better point where I was just drawn into it because I was drawn into it. It does draw you in. You're just looking for pages in the woods, so you're concentrating. You're in these dark woods, and these pages they're they're not super easy to find, but they are hard to miss because it's literally just a bright white square in the middle of these dark black and gray woods. Like it's just when you walk up to them, it's highlighted, so you can see it's bright. You can see it, so it's like you're just trying to like, but the thing is, Slender's head is the same thing. It's just bright white. So like, if he's standing in the distance and you're walking towards it, thinking it's a page, or him, like, oh, that looks like a page taped to a tree. No, that's his damn head. Well, you're just walking towards the guy, and when you got to get away from him. And the thing is, you can't run super fast because the thing is, like, you have stamina, very limited, but also like the closer Slender gets to you, the slower you move because I believe in the creepypasta says like when Slender gets closer, he's near you, you start to feel sick or sore, stuff like that, and you can't run because you don't feel you don't feel right. And so I don't know if that translated well into the game or if that's just for the sake of the game itself being that survival horror genre. Limited stamina, you can't run forever, so you have to like pace yourself with the running, run until he disappears, and oh, that's another thing, staring at him. You can't stare at him for too long because then you'll just fade out and he'll get you. Because the screen will get all staticky. Like you remember like the old school like tube TV, and it's all static and it has the black and white and gray dots and there's static when you unplug a antenna or something. That's what the screen does. If Slender's close to you or if you stare at him for too long, it'll get all staticky and then he's got you. You hear that boom and he's got you. It's just his big ass body with his face, faceless face standing over you, and that's it. You're dead. Uh, but the replayability, going back to what I said earlier about the replayability of this game, it's like I said, it's not a whole lot. If you can do it at a faster time, that's great. But there's not really a whole lot to it. Once you get the 8 pages and beat the game, that's it. That's the whole game. Maybe play a different Slender game, but this was the first one that came out. This is all people had at the time. It was just that one game. Back in 2012, it's just crazy to think that the Slender character himself has been around for almost 20 years at this point. It's getting ready to be 2026. So in about 3 more years, it'll be a 20-year-old folklore fairy tale type of creature. And the Slenderman game came out in 2012. This one here, and it's already passed 10 years. Give it 7 more years from now, or 6 more years from a few weeks from now, then yeah, it'll be a 20-year-old game. So I would consider this to be, in my opinion, I would consider it to be retro because a lot of games like these tend to move fast on the timeline. You know, games like sure, like Five Nights at Freddy's, I wouldn't consider that retro. But if you want to do it, because it came out on PC first on Steam before they put it on physical copies and whatnot. But I don't know. I would consider this retro. Slender's been around for a while. He's got 9 million games. After him, Folklore, a movie. One of the biggest creepy pastas out there on the internet. I would consider this retro, and that's why he's on memory lane. All you can't be listening to this and not know who Slender is. I would remember. This was the game that caused me to be a fan of Markiplier because he would play this and then his commentary, because his commentary, especially back then, he would talk about the game while having, reactions to it. So it just felt like he wasn't, like me, just this dude alone in a room with a microphone in front of a computer. No, he felt like he was there with somebody having a conversation, but he wasn't. But and then I saw all these other Slender games that he played, and I was like, wow, this is bigger than I thought. This 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 dude here that I just now learned about has not just one game, but a fucking laundry list of games that are actually not bad. You know, so props to Mark J. Hadley for bringing this to life and making this a real game and drawing inspiration from even a bigger game, Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Uh, but Parsec Productions made a couple of Slender games. I can't remember which ones off the top of my head, but I know this one for sure. Mark J. Hadley and Mark Steen are like the two guys I think of when I think of Slenderman, because they really had their hands all over this guy, making all these type of games and spin-offs and just updating the games and changing the atmosphere and changing his looks and just keeping consistently to the point where like you play one game, now you want to move on to the next. It's almost like a series. Like, okay, there's part one, then there's part two, then there's part three. But like Slender the Eight Pages, then you have Slender Woods, you have Slender Prison, you have Slender Claustrophobia, you have Slender Mansion. Like all these different levels. There's even a Christmas one where instead of being chased by Slender Man, you're being chased by Santa that acts like Slender. So he's a static figure. You're in a Slender realm, like in the woods and stuff. And instead of hunting pages, you're hunting presents. And but it's Santa instead of Slender Man. To the point where they even did stuff like that. Like there's no way you can sit up here and tell me that this skinny figure here that looks like that was drawn by a 4-year-old uh, blew up to be one of the biggest names in PC gaming. And that was strictly PC gaming. I'm not talking like Minecraft or nothing like that, but I'm talking like Flash gaming and the free downloads and the heydays of YouTube and the creepypastas and the folklore, and then just the weird side of the internet, just everything I mentioned before. There was just no way that you cannot put a physical figure, you can't put an image of a figure in your mind when you hear this name. We've all had to play this game at least once because it was a big game at the time. We all had everyone's interest in it. Slender Man, the Eight Pages, I say was a not necessarily a pioneer of survival horror, but definitely like one of the forerunners of a genre that was highly, you know, I wouldn't say highly sought after, but it was a genre that a lot of people kept trying to dip their toes into and just made either was something that was made to be good or something that turned out to be crap. Because survival horror, it's like, well, like okay, let's say a bunch of zombies is coming at you and you just shoot them all dead. You're trying to survive, and zombies is related to horror. But I wouldn't necessarily call that survival horror. I would just call that a shooter. You know, this is survival horror. You're trying to survive in the woods. It's a horror game. You're being chased by this monster thing that doesn't move. He just teleports from place to place until he finally gets you. It while you're in the woods looking for these fucking pages, these pieces of paper that are taped to buildings and trees and boulders. for whatever reason, you just thought it was a good idea to go, I'm gonna go out here, I'm gonna do this real quick. No, fuck no. You asked me to go out in the woods, find some papers. I said, for what? Why need you to go out in the woods and find papers for? I got papers right here. And I'm just, this- I'm just fucking with the whole situation now. I'm stretching it real thin, no pun intended. Because there's, like I said, not a whole lot of meat on this bone here. It's not a full on chicken, but it's a nugget that grew on to be a chicken, if you know what I'm saying. Because this game here is just the bare minimum of what Slender really became in gaming history, gaming lore, creepypastas, the survival horror genre. It only got better from here to the point where it's it's good. It went from good to great, you know. And like I said, this one here, this original was highly praised by critics because of the tension and the limited stamina and just the and does draw you in. Like it feels like you're actually in there because all it is just you know the person you play as it's just a hand with a flashlight, and I don't even think you see the hand. I think it's just a flashlight. So it's all FPS, first person viewing. There was and I can't say this enough because just my love for this and the Slender series and whatnot. But there was no way you cannot play this game and wanting more, or end up talking about it, or watching it on YouTube, or reading about it in the creepypasta forums and whatnot. Like when you played a game and you liked it, you liked it. You were on it. Uh, you know, People on YouTube, people today, myself, I still go back and play Slender every once in a while. I have a couple episodes, or not episodes, but a couple of videos of me playing some basic Slender Flash games on Newgrounds on my YouTube. You know, but this is the second official episode of Memory Lane podcast here, and I'm just gonna do the first few episodes for sure are gonna be games that just I really love, and I don't need to go back and replay them to tell you about it. Like my first few ones are definitely going to be based off memory because that's just how much I love these games, this hobby, and just the inspiration I get from listening to other podcasters talk about their favorite stuff. Uh, so play Slender if you haven't. This is you can kind of see, like, play any Slender game. Play this one especially to kind of see where it started, and then play the most recent one if you can, and just see where it ended up at. You can see this game had a following, and it still does. And Slenderman is still loved by many weirdos out there, including myself. But thank you all for listening. Thank you for coming with me down memory lane. And next week we hit another destination that is to be announced. All right, I'm out.